I wanted to rewrite my will in my son's name, but my neighbor called me. Stop. Come to my place immediately, alone. What she accidentally overheard saved my life. I'm glad you're here with me. Please listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. My life had been quiet and predictable for the past 3 years since my husband Robert passed away. I lived alone in our modest two-story house in the Portland suburbs, the same house where we'd raised our son Brian. The mortgage was paid off decades ago, and between Robert's pension and my Social Security, I managed comfortably. Not wealthy, but secure. Brian visited once a month, sometimes with his wife Crystal. They'd stay for Sunday dinner. We'd talk about their jobs, their plans. Crystal worked as a dental hygienist, Brian in middle management at a logistics company. They seemed happy enough, though they'd mentioned several times lately that they were stretched thin financially. I'd offered small loans here and there, which they'd accepted gratefully. But something had shifted in the past few weeks. It started small. Brian called more frequently, asking casual questions about my health, my finances, whether I'd updated my will recently. Just making sure everything's in order, Mom, he'd say. You're not getting any younger. The words felt caring on the surface, but something in his tone made my stomach tighten. Then Crystal started joining these conversations, her voice sugary sweet. Margaret, have you thought about simplifying things? You know, making sure Brian doesn't have to deal with complications when, well, you know. When what? When I died? I was 68 and in good health, not on death's door. 2 weeks ago, they visited unexpectedly on a Tuesday evening. Brian suggested I meet with their lawyer friend to update some documents. Crystal squeezed my hand and smiled. It would give us such peace of mind, knowing you're taken care of. But I already had a will. Everything was going to Brian anyway. He was my only child. What needed updating? I'd noticed other things too. Small things. Crystal asking detailed questions about my medication routine. Brian casually measuring my kitchen, saying something about eventually renovating. The way they'd both started calling me more fragile than I felt, treating me like I was confused when I was perfectly sharp. Last Thursday, Brian brought over a stack of papers. Just some estate planning stuff, Mom. Sign here, here, and here. I'd started to reach for my reading glasses when something stopped me. Why the rush? Why couldn't I read them properly first? Let me look these over, I'd said. I'll sign them next time you visit. The temperature in the room had dropped. Crystal's smile had frozen on her face. Brian's jaw had clenched. It's really just standard paperwork, he'd said, his voice tight. Nothing complicated. But I'd held firm. They'd left earlier than usual, and I'd felt their disappointment like a cold fog. That was 5 days ago. Since then, Brian had called twice daily, pressing me about those papers. Have you looked them over yet? When can we come get them signed? The urgency felt wrong. Everything felt wrong. This morning, I'd finally made a decision. I was being paranoid, I told myself. Brian was my son, my only child. Of course he had my best interests at heart. I was probably imagining things, letting loneliness twist normal concern into something sinister. I'd picked up the phone to call him, to tell him to bring the papers back, that I'd sign them. I'd started dialing when my cell phone rang. It was Donna, my neighbor from 3 houses down. Margaret. Her voice was strange, breathless, urgent. Stop whatever you're doing. Don't sign anything. Don't call Brian. Come to my house right now, alone. This is urgent. Please. My hand had frozen on the phone. Donna, what? Now, Margaret, come right now. And don't tell anyone you're coming here. She'd hung up. I'd stood in my kitchen, my heart pounding. Donna was 72, a retired school teacher, sensible and calm. I'd never heard that tone in her voice before, that mixture of fear and determination. What could she possibly know? I'd looked down at my phone, at Brian's number still displayed on the screen. My finger had hovered over the call button. Then I'd set the phone down, grabbed my purse, and walked out my back door. The three-house walk to Donna's had felt like miles. What had she heard? What did she know? And why did my hands shake as I knocked on her door? When she'd opened it, her face was pale. She'd pulled me inside quickly, locked the door behind us, and led me to her kitchen table. A cup of tea sat waiting, still steaming. "Sit down, Margaret," she'd said quietly. "What I'm about to tell you is going to break your heart, but it might just save your life." Donna's hands trembled as she poured herself tea. She didn't look at me directly at first, just stared at the steam rising from her cup. "Yesterday afternoon," she began slowly, "I was in my backyard, trimming the roses along the fence line. You know how the bushes are overgrown there, right up against your property. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, Margaret. You have to believe that." "What did you hear?" My voice came out as a whisper. She took a deep breath. "Brian and Crystal were in your backyard. I heard them through the fence. They must have thought you were inside, couldn't hear them. They were arguing, but keeping their voices low." She finally met my eyes. "Margaret, Brian said once she signs the new will and the power of attorney, we'll have about 6 months, maybe less." And Crystal said, "6 months until what?" And he said, she stopped, her eyes filling with tears. "Tell me." He said, "Until we can make it look natural. Old people fall all the time. They forget to turn off the stove. They take the wrong medication. It happens." The kitchen tilted. I gripped the edge of the table. "Crystal asked about the money," Donna continued, her voice breaking. "She said, but the house is only worth about 400,000. That's not enough to solve our problems." And Brian said, "It's not just the house. There's the life insurance, 250,000, plus her savings and investment accounts. She's been careful her whole life. My father's pension included a survivor benefit she never touched. We're talking close to 900,000 total, maybe more." 900,000. I'd been careful, yes, frugal. Robert and I had saved, invested modestly, lived below our means. We'd wanted security. We'd wanted to leave Brian something. "There's more," Donna said quietly. "Crystal said something about how you were too healthy and that the papers needed to be signed first so they'd have control. Brian said the new will cuts out any other beneficiaries. He mentioned something about a charity you'd planned to leave money to. And the power of attorney would let them access everything immediately if you became incapacitated. The Humane Society. Robert and I had pledged 10% to them, $100,000. We'd loved animals all our lives. They talked about timing," Donna continued. "Crystal said, what if she already told someone about the charity?" And Brian said, "She hasn't. I checked her current will at her house last month when she was at the grocery store. Once the new one is signed, the old one becomes void." He'd been in my documents, in my private papers, searching through my things. My son, my baby boy, who I'd rocked to sleep, who I'd nursed through childhood illnesses, who I'd put through college working double shifts as a waitress because Robert's salary only stretched so far. That little boy was planning to kill me for money. The tears came then, hot and bitter. Donna moved her chair beside mine and held my hand while I sobbed. How long did I cry? 10 minutes? 20? When the tears finally slowed, I felt hollow, carved out. "What do I do?" I asked. "We call the police." "And tell them what? That my neighbor overheard a conversation through a fence? That my son was discussing hypotheticals?" I shook my head. They'd call it a misunderstanding. There's no proof, no recording. It's my word, your word, against his. Then what? I was quiet for a long moment, my mind working through the shock and grief. I need to think clearly. I need to know exactly what I'm dealing with. Margaret, if I confront him now with no proof, he'll deny everything. He'll say you misheard, or that he was joking, or discussing a movie plot. And then he'll know I'm suspicious. He'll know I know. I looked at her. And if he's really planning what you heard, desperate people do desperate things. The fear was there, cold in my chest. But something else was building too. Something harder. I need to see those papers he wanted me to sign. I need to understand exactly what the plan was. How will you do that? I'll call him. I'll say I'm ready to sign. I'll tell him to bring them over. I stood up, steadying myself against the table. But I won't sign them. I'll read every word. And I'll make copies before he leaves. And then? Then I figure out how to protect myself, how to prove what he's planning, and how to make sure he can't hurt me. Donna studied my face. You're sure you want to do this? Maybe you should just disappear, stay with friends, cut him off. He's my son. The words hurt to say. And whether I disappear or not, he's shown me who he really is. I need to know the full truth. I need to stop him, not just run away. I pulled out my phone. My hand was steadier now. It was time to start fighting back. I called Brian from Donna's kitchen, putting the phone on speaker so she could hear. Mom? He answered on the first ring. Is everything okay? Everything's fine, honey. I've been thinking about those papers you brought over. I'm sorry I was difficult about it. You're right. I should have everything in order. A pause. Then his voice, careful, measured. So you've looked them over? I'd like to. Could you bring them by tomorrow morning? Say 10 o'clock? I'll sign them then. Tomorrow? Eagerness crept into his tone. I could come by today, Mom. This evening even. No need to wait. Tomorrow is better. I have a hair appointment this afternoon. A lie, but believable. 10 o'clock? Sure, Mom. 10 o'clock. That's great. Really great. He sounded almost relieved. I'll bring Crystal too so she can witness the signatures. Of course he would. After I hung up, Donna and I made a plan. She'd come over at 9:30 before Brian arrived. We'd photograph every page of every document. Then I'd read them carefully while appearing to just skim. I wouldn't sign anything, not yet. I'd tell Brian I wanted my own lawyer to review them first, a reasonable request that he couldn't refuse without looking suspicious. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about Brian as a child, his gap-toothed smile, the way he'd hug me after school, the pride in his eyes at his college graduation. When had it changed? When had money become more important than his mother? Or had I simply never seen who he really was? The next morning, I dressed carefully. Neat slacks, a cardigan. I wanted to look competent, clear-headed, not like someone who could be pushed around or confused. Donna arrived at 9:30 sharp, camera ready. We set up her phone on a stack of books on the kitchen counter, angled to capture the table where I'd lay out the documents. At exactly 10 o'clock, Brian's car pulled into my driveway. Crystal was with him. Through the window, I watched them walk to the door, both of them smiling. Crystal carried a small pastry box, my favorite croissants from the bakery on Morrison Street. How thoughtful, how perfectly manipulative. Morning, Mom. Brian kissed my cheek. He smelled like his father's cologne. Had he done that deliberately? You look great. Feeling good? Just fine. I led them to the kitchen. Coffee? We brought breakfast. Crystal set down the pastry box, her smile bright. We're just so happy you're doing this, Margaret. It really does make things so much simpler. Brian pulled a manila folder from his messenger bag. I made you a copy of everything to keep. This set is for signing. He spread papers across my kitchen table. Power of attorney, new last will and testament, healthcare directive, beneficiary designation forms for my bank accounts. I picked up the will first, putting on my reading glasses. Behind me, Donna's phone was recording everything. It's pretty straightforward, Brian said, leaning over my shoulder. Everything goes to me, which is what you always wanted anyway. We just clarified some language about the estate execution process, made it more efficient. I read slowly, and there it was, on page 3. All previous wills, codicils, and testamentary dispositions are hereby revoked. The carefully worded language removing the Humane Society bequest, buried in legal terminology. A casual reader might miss it. They'd been counting on me to miss it. The power of attorney was worse. It granted Brian immediate authority over my finances, my healthcare decisions, my property. It didn't require any doctor's certification of incapacity, just his word that I was unable to manage my affairs. This is very comprehensive, I said slowly. That's good, right? Crystal's voice was honey-sweet. Comprehensive means protected. It means you'd have complete control over everything I own. A beat of silence. Brian laughed, but it sounded forced. Mom, I'm your son. Of course you trust me. Of course. I set down the will and picked up the healthcare directive. This one made my blood run cold. It authorized Brian to refuse any life-saving treatment on my behalf, to discontinue life support, to make all end-of-life decisions. If I fell down the stairs, as Brian had so casually suggested to Crystal, and ended up in the hospital, he could simply let me die. Refuse surgery. Refuse intervention. It would all be legal, documented. His right as my healthcare proxy. I need my lawyer to review these, I said quietly. The temperature in the room dropped. Your lawyer? Brian's smile tightened. Mom, this is standard estate planning. You don't need... I need my lawyer to review them. I kept my voice firm. It's my signature, my assets. I'd be foolish not to have professional advice. Crystal's eyes narrowed. We used a professional to draw these up. Our lawyer friend. Then my lawyer will confirm everything is in order, and I'll sign next week. I began stacking the papers. I'll make an appointment this week. Mom? Brian's voice had changed, harder now. These documents need to be signed and notarized together. If you wait, then we'll wait and do them together next week. I met his eyes. Brian, I'm not confused, and I'm not being difficult. I'm being responsible. You should appreciate that. He stared at me. For just a moment, I saw something flicker across his face. Anger, frustration, maybe even hatred. Then the mask slid back into place. Of course, Mom. Whatever makes you comfortable. He gathered the papers stiffly. Call me after you meet with your lawyer. They left quickly, Crystal's goodbye notably cooler. Through the window, I watched them sit in the car for several minutes, talking animatedly. Brian's hands gestured sharply. Crystal shook her head. They knew something had changed. They knew I was stalling, and that made me dangerous to them. Donna emerged from the hallway where she'd been hiding. I got everything on video. Good. I was already pulling out my laptop. Now I need to find a lawyer, a real one. Someone who specializes in elder abuse. Elder abuse? That's what this is. Financial exploitation, attempted fraud, and conspiracy to commit. I couldn't say the word. Murder. My son was conspiring to commit my murder. The point of no return had passed. Now I was fighting for my life. Monday morning, I sat across from Patricia Chen, a lawyer Donna had found through her church. Patricia specialized in elder law and had a reputation for being tough and thorough. Her office was small but professional, filled with files and law books. I'd brought everything, the documents Brian wanted me to sign, my current will, my financial statements, and Donna's video recording. Patricia watched the video twice, her expression growing darker. "This is legally admissible as evidence in Oregon," she said finally. "Your neighbor recorded a conversation she accidentally overheard on her own property. That's not wiretapping. It's simply documenting what she witnessed." "What do I do?" "Several things, immediately." Patricia pulled out a legal pad. "First, we file a new will today, explicitly stating you're of sound mind and acting without coercion. Second, we establish a durable power of attorney naming someone other than Brian, a professional fiduciary, or a trusted friend. Third, we notify your bank to flag any attempts to access your accounts. Fourth, we document everything, every phone call, every visit, every interaction with your son. Will that be enough? To protect your assets? Yes. To prosecute him?" She hesitated. "That's harder. What your neighbor overheard is deeply disturbing, but conspiracy charges require proof of concrete steps toward the crime. Right now, they've taken steps toward financial fraud, but not toward physical harm. So I just wait for him to try to kill me? No. You document, you protect yourself, and you build a case. Has he had access to your home? Keys?" "He has a key, from when Robert died, in case of emergency. Change your locks today. Install security cameras. Let me draft a cease and desist letter establishing boundaries. No more unexpected visits. No more pressure to sign documents. If he violates that, it strengthens our case." We spent 3 hours in her office. By the end, I'd signed a new will leaving 10% to the Humane Society, as Robert and I had always planned, with the remainder to Brian, only if he survived me and had not been convicted of any crime against me or my estate. A poison pill clause, Patricia called it. I'd appointed Donna as my healthcare proxy. I'd authorized Patricia to notify Adult Protective Services of the situation. "This will make him very angry," Patricia warned. "When he learns you've lawyered up, that you've blocked his access, he may escalate. These situations can become dangerous. He was already planning to kill me." "Yes, but now he'll know you're aware. That changes his calculations." She handed me a business card. "This is a detective I've worked with before. Former Portland PD, now does private investigation. Call him. Have him install cameras. Do a security assessment. And Margaret? Don't be alone with your son. Not anymore." I left her office feeling both empowered and terrified. The fear was real. My son wanted me dead. But at least now I was fighting back. The locksmith came that afternoon. New deadbolts, new keys. The security company came the next morning. Cameras at the front door, back door, covering the driveway. A Ring doorbell. Motion sensors. Brian called 3 times that week. I didn't answer. He left voicemails, each one progressively more strained. "Mom, just checking in. Call me back?" Then, "Mom, I'm worried about you. Please call." Finally, "Mom, this is getting ridiculous. What's going on?" On Friday, he showed up at my door. I watched him on the Ring camera, watched him try his key in the lock. When it didn't work, confusion crossed his face, then anger. He rang the doorbell insistently. I opened the door but left the chain on. "Hello, Brian." "Mom?" His smile was forced. "What's with the new locks?" "Home security upgrade. The police recommended it." "The police? Why were the police here?" "Community safety meeting. They suggested better locks for seniors living alone." The lie came smoothly. "You could have called me. I would have installed them." He tried to peer past me into the house. "Can I come in?" "Actually, now isn't a good time. I have an appointment." "An appointment? With who?" "My lawyer." His face went rigid. "Your lawyer? About what?" "About my estate. I've decided to make some changes." The mask slipped. For just a second, raw fury flashed across his face. What kind of changes? That's between me and my attorney. Now, if you'll excuse me. Mom, he grabbed the door, stopping me from closing it. We need to talk about this. Take your hand off my door, Brian. Not until you tell me what's going on. Did someone put ideas in your head? That busybody neighbor of yours? Because I'm your son. Everything I've done has been for you. Your hand off my door. Crystal appeared behind him on the porch. Margaret, we're just concerned. You're acting paranoid. I'm acting prudent, and I'm asking you both to leave. Fine. Brian stepped back, but his eyes were hard. But you're making a mistake. A big mistake. We're family. We're supposed to trust each other. Trust is earned. They left, but Crystal looked back at me from the sidewalk. Her expression was calculating, cold. They sat in the car again, talking. Brian's face was red, animated. He slammed his hand on the steering wheel. Then they drove away. I closed the door, locked all 3 locks, and sat down, shaking. Donna came over within 10 minutes. She'd been watching from her window. That was dangerous, she said. I know. What if he'd forced his way in? The cameras are recording. Patricia said we need documentation. I showed her my phone, where Ring had captured everything. Brian's aggression, his attempt to use his old key, his refusal to leave when asked. You need a few days away from this, Donna said. You're running on adrenaline. It's going to crash. She was right. I felt like I'd been holding my breath for a week. That night, I barely ate. I kept checking the cameras, expecting to see Brian's car return. He didn't come back that night. But I knew he wasn't done. And I knew I needed to be ready for whatever came next. For 3 days, I heard nothing from Brian. No calls, no visits, no angry voicemails. The silence felt ominous, like the quiet before a storm. I took Donna's advice and rested. I read books. I tended my garden. I tried to process the impossible reality. My son, my only child, wanted me dead for money. On the 4th day, Wednesday morning, a massive flower arrangement arrived at my door. 24 roses, white and pink, with a card. Mom, I'm sorry, I love you. Can we start over? Brian. I photographed the arrangement, the card, everything. Then I called Patricia. Classic manipulation tactic, she said. Love bombing after aggressive behavior. Testing if you'll soften. What should I do? Don't respond. Let him wonder. That afternoon, a delivery driver brought a gift basket from the gourmet store downtown. Cheeses, crackers, chocolates, wine. Another card. Thinking of you. Please call me. B. I didn't open the food. Patricia had warned me that desperate people sometimes resort to poisoning, though she said it was rare. Still, I wasn't taking chances. The basket went directly to Donna's garage, untouched. That evening, my phone rang. Not Brian, Crystal. Margaret? Her voice was warm, concerned. I hope you got the flowers. Brian's been so worried about you. I said nothing. He thinks maybe you're upset about something. He can't sleep, Margaret. He loves you so much. Whatever's bothering you, can't we talk about it? There's nothing to discuss, Crystal. But there clearly is. You changed your locks. You won't see your own son. He's devastated. A pause. Margaret, I know relationships can be complicated, but Brian has always put you first. Always. Don't you think he deserves a chance to understand what's wrong? I'm fine. I just need space right now. Space from your family? Her voice sharpened slightly. That's not like you. Has someone been filling your head with ideas? Because I have to tell you, isolating yourself from family is a classic sign of what? Well, cognitive decline, paranoia. It happens with age, Margaret. Brian's worried you might be experiencing some confusion. Rage flashed through me, white hot. She was trying to paint me as senile, setting up a narrative. I'm 68 years old, Crystal. I'm not confused, and I'm not paranoid. I'm making informed decisions about my life and my estate. That's my right. Of course it is, but this conversation is over. Don't call me again unless I call you first. I hung up before she could respond. My hands shook with anger. They were already building their defense, their excuse. She was confused. She was declining. We were just trying to help. The next day, Thursday, I found support in an unexpected place. I'd mentioned my situation to my friend Eleanor at our weekly book club. Kept it vague, just said I was having family difficulties. Eleanor had pulled me aside afterward. I went through something similar 5 years ago, she'd said quietly. My daughter and her husband tried to convince me to sign over my house. Said they'd take care of me. I'm so glad I didn't. They divorced 2 years later, and I would have lost everything. What did you do? Got a good lawyer like you did. Set boundaries. It was the hardest thing I ever did, but it saved me. She squeezed my hand. If you need anything, someone to stay with you, a witness for meetings, anything, call me. You shouldn't go through this alone. Having Eleanor's support steadied me. I wasn't being crazy or cruel. I was protecting myself like any reasonable person would. Friday brought another delivery. A framed photo of Brian as a child, sitting on my lap at his 5th birthday party. Both of us laughing, cake on our faces. The note said, "Remember when things were simple? I miss you, Mom." The photo was meant to break me, to remind me of the sweet child he'd been, to make me doubt what I knew he'd become. I looked at that photo for a long time. I did remember that day. I remembered every sacrifice I'd made for that little boy, every double shift, every missed event with friends, every penny saved, and I remembered Donna's voice. He said, "Until we can make it look natural, old people fall all the time." That little boy was gone. Or maybe he'd never existed the way I'd thought. I put the photo in a drawer and closed it. That night, Patricia called. The cease and desist letter was delivered to Brian today. It formally notifies him that he's not to come to your house unannounced, not to pressure you about estate documents, and not to contact you except through me or by your invitation. How will he react? Honestly, probably not well. People like your son, controlling people who feel entitled to your assets. They don't like boundaries. They see them as attacks. She paused. "Margaret, I need you to be very careful this weekend. Promise me you won't be alone with him." "I promise." "And keep documenting everything. Every gift, every call, every message. It's all part of the pattern we're building." After we hung up, I sat in my quiet house, my doors locked, my cameras recording. Outside, twilight settled over the neighborhood. Everything looked peaceful, normal. But I knew better now. The calm was temporary. Brian and Crystal were regrouping, planning their next move. And I needed to be ready. They came Sunday morning, unannounced. I was in my garden, pruning roses, when I heard the car door slam. I looked up to see Brian and Crystal walking up my driveway, both dressed nicely, church clothes, though I knew they didn't attend church. Brian held up his hands in a peaceful gesture as he approached. "Mom, please. Just 5 minutes. We need to talk." "You received the letter from my attorney. That's exactly what we need to talk about." He stopped a respectful distance away. "Can we come inside? Please?" Every instinct said no. But Donna was watching from her window. We'd arranged that after Patricia's warning. Eleanor had given me a personal alarm that connected to her phone, and all my cameras were recording. "We can talk out here. The neighbors can hear whatever you have to say. 5 minutes, Brian, that's all." He exchanged a glance with Crystal, then nodded. They followed me to my patio table, where I'd been having morning coffee. I didn't offer them any. Mom, I don't understand what's happening. Brian's voice was pained, confused, an excellent performance. That letter from your lawyer, it made it sound like we've been harassing you, like we're enemies. We're not. We're your family. The letter establishes boundaries. But why do we need boundaries? Since when can't I visit my own mother? You can visit, with notice, at reasonable times. Crystal leaned forward, her face sympathetic. Margaret, we're worried about you. These sudden changes, the locks, the lawyer, pushing away your family, they're concerning. We love you. We just want to make sure you're okay. I'm fine. But are you? Brian's tone shifted, became more intense. Because fine people don't suddenly act paranoid. Fine people don't cut off their only son for trying to help them plan their estate. I'm not cutting you off. I'm establishing healthy boundaries. Healthy? Crystal laughed, but there was no warmth in it. What's healthy about refusing to let your son in your house? About changing locks without telling him? About running to a lawyer the moment he tries to help you? Help me? I felt my temper rising. Is that what you call it? Yes. Brian stood up, agitated. That's exactly what it is. Mom, you're 68 years old. Dad's been gone 3 years. You're alone. Something could happen to you, and nobody would even be able to get in to help. Those papers I asked you to sign? They were just practical preparations. They were designed to give you complete control over my life and my assets. Silence fell. Brian stared at me. Who told you that? I can read, Brian. I had an actual attorney review those documents. They weren't simple estate planning. They were a power grab. His jaw tightened. A power grab? I'm your son. And that entitles you to what exactly? My money? My house? The right to make medical decisions for me whether I want you to or not. Crystal stood up too, her friendly mask cracking. Ungrateful. That's what you are. Do you know how many children abandon their elderly parents? Brian has been here for you. He calls you. He visits you. He cares what happens to you. And this is how you repay him? I never asked to be repaid for being a mother. No, but you clearly have no problem punishing your son for trying to be a good son. Her voice had risen. You're acting like he's trying to hurt you when all he's ever done is love you. Is that what you think he's trying to do? I asked quietly. Love me? Of course! Crystal was nearly shouting now. What else would he be doing? Stealing from me, controlling me, planning my death. The words hung in the air like a bomb. Brian went very still. What did you say? I said you're planning my death. For the money. That's insane. But his voice had changed, become flat, dangerous. That's absolutely insane. Who put that idea in your head? Nobody put it there. I know what you're planning. You know nothing. He stepped closer, and for the first time, I felt physically afraid of my son. You're a paranoid old woman who's been listening to gossip. I heard you, Brian. The lie came out smoothly. In the backyard, talking about making it look natural, about falls and medication errors. His face went white, then red. You couldn't have. But I did. Crystal grabbed his arm. She's bluffing. She has to be bluffing. But Brian was staring at me with pure hatred now, all pretense gone. You've ruined everything. You stupid, selfish. He caught himself, breathing hard. Get out of my yard, I said quietly. Both of you. This isn't over, Crystal hissed. You can't cut Brian out. He's your son. He has rights. He has no rights to my assets while I'm alive and after I'm dead? I smiled coldly. Well, My new will is very clear about what happens if anyone contests it or if I die under suspicious circumstances. Every penny goes to charity. Brian's hands clenched into fists. For a moment, I thought he might actually hit me. Then Crystal pulled him back. Let's go. She's not worth it. They stormed to their car. Brian slammed the door so hard I heard it from the patio. They sat there for a long moment, both of them yelling at each other before peeling out of my driveway. I sat down, my legs shaking. My heart pounded so hard I felt dizzy. Donna was at my door within seconds. I called the police. I watched the whole thing. He threatened you. No, no police. Not yet. I needed to think. He didn't actually threaten me. He just got angry. Margaret, we need more, Donna. We need enough to make charges stick. I pulled out my phone, sent the ring footage to Patricia. But now we have them showing their real faces. Now we have proof of their hostility. Now the real war had begun. Patricia called an emergency meeting for Monday morning. She'd reviewed all the footage from Sunday, listened to the audio recording. Her expression was grim. This escalation is exactly what I was afraid of, she said. They've dropped the pretense. Now they're desperate and angry. That makes them dangerous. What do I do? We go on offense. I've been in contact with that detective I mentioned, Tom Bradley. He's been investigating your son since last week. Financial records, social media, background. He's found some interesting things. She opened a folder and spread documents across her desk. Bank statements, credit card records, loan applications. Your son is in serious financial trouble. He and Crystal have over $90,000 in credit card debt. They took out a second mortgage 2 years ago. They've got a car loan they're behind on. Crystal's been gambling. Online poker, casino trips to Spirit Mountain. They're drowning. I had no idea. They hid it well. But 6 months ago, Brian started researching Oregon estate law, inheritance procedures, and... She paused. How to contest wills and establish mental incapacity in elderly parents. My stomach turned. He also downloaded several articles about accidental deaths in elderly people, false statistics, medication interactions, all deleted from his computer, but Bradley was able to recover them. That's premeditation? Yes. Combined with the recording of their conversation, the aggressive documents he tried to get you to sign, and the pattern of escalating behavior, we have enough to go to the police. More specifically, to the district attorney. Will they prosecute? Bradley thinks so. The DA's office has been cracking down on elder financial abuse. This case has conspiracy, attempted fraud, and credible threat of harm. It's exactly the kind of case they want to make an example of. My hands trembled. If we do this, there's no going back. Brian goes to prison. If you don't do this, Brian might succeed in killing you. She was right. I knew she was right. Okay, I whispered, do it. The meeting with the DA happened Wednesday. I sat in a conference room with Patricia, Detective Bradley, an assistant district attorney named Marcus Wells, and 2 investigators. They recorded my statement. I told them everything. Donna's overheard conversation, the fraudulent documents, the escalating behavior, the confrontation in my yard. They showed me what they'd compiled. Brian's financial records, his search history, witness statements from Donna and Eleanor, the video footage, the timeline of his increasing desperation. Mrs. Harrison, Marcus said carefully, this is one of the most clear-cut cases of elder financial exploitation and conspiracy I've seen. Your son was systematically working to gain control of your assets and, based on all available evidence, planning to cause your death to accelerate his inheritance. Hearing it stated so baldly, so officially, made it real in a way it hadn't been before. What happens now? We arrest him. Both him and Crystal. She was complicit in the planning and execution. We charge conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted financial exploitation of an elder, and criminal conspiracy. Given the evidence of their conversations about causing your death, we'll also pursue charges of conspiracy to commit murder. When? Tomorrow morning, we wanted your consent first, but Mrs. Harrison, with or without it, we'd be moving forward. This is too serious to ignore. I nodded, numb. Thursday morning, I stayed home. Patricia called me at 10:47 a.m. It's done. They arrested both of them at their house. Your son's being booked now. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt hollow. That evening, Brian's lawyer called me, a public defender, since Brian couldn't afford private counsel. Mrs. Harrison, my client would like to speak with you. No. Ma'am, he's your son. He's devastated. He says there's been a terrible misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding. He planned to kill me for money. Tell him I have nothing to say to him. I hung up. Crystal's mother called next, hysterical. How could you do this to them? To your own son? They were just trying to help you. They were trying to rob and murder me. That's ridiculous! Crystal would never! The police have evidence. The district attorney has evidence. If you want to help your daughter, get her a good lawyer and tell her to cooperate with the investigation. More calls came over the next few days. Brian's childhood friends, former neighbors, people I hadn't spoken to in years, all calling to plead his case, to tell me I was being cruel, to say I'd misunderstood. Only Donna, Eleanor, and Patricia understood. People don't want to believe that children can be predators, Patricia explained. It challenges their fundamental worldview. It's easier for them to believe you're confused or vindictive than to accept that your son wanted you dead. The preliminary hearing was set for 3 weeks out. Until then, Brian and Crystal were both out on bail, though they'd been ordered to stay away from me. Restraining orders were in place. I should have felt safe, but I knew better. Desperate people, cornered people, didn't just give up. They got more dangerous. The night before the preliminary hearing, my alarm went off at 2:17 a.m. I woke to the sound of breaking glass. My kitchen window. My heart slammed against my ribs as I grabbed my phone, pressed the emergency alert that connected to Eleanor and to the police. Then I locked my bedroom door and crouched in the corner, phone in hand, watching the Ring camera feeds. A figure in dark clothes climbed through my kitchen window. Male, medium height. Brian. He moved through my house quietly, purposefully, checking rooms, looking for me. My phone buzzed. Eleanor. Police are coming. 3 minutes. Stay locked in. On camera, I watched Brian try my bedroom door. Find it locked. Mom? His voice was soft, almost pleading. Mom, I just want to talk. Open the door. I said nothing. Mom, please. They've ruined everything. That lawyer, those cops, they don't understand. We can fix this. We can tell them you were confused, that you want to drop the charges. Open the door. Silence. His voice changed, became harder. Open the door, Mom. He slammed against it. Once. Twice. The doorframe cracked, but held. You destroyed my life. For what? You're going to die anyway. In 5 years, 10 years, what difference does it make? The money was going to be mine eventually. You selfish, vindictive. Sirens, close now. Brian cursed. I heard him run back through the house, watched on camera as he tried to climb out the window, and came face to face with police flashlights. Hands up! Get on the ground! The arrest was swift. Brian, face down on my kitchen floor, hands cuffed behind his back, screaming that I was crazy, that he was just checking on me, that I'd been in danger. The officers found the crowbar he'd used on my window, found the bottle of pills in his pocket, my prescription medication, the same pills I kept in my bathroom cabinet. Sleeping pills. Enough to kill someone if crushed into food or drink. Detective Bradley arrived 20 minutes later. By then, I was sitting on my couch, wrapped in a blanket Eleanor had brought over, giving my statement to 2 officers. Breaking and entering attempted burglary, violation of a restraining order, Bradley said grimly. And given those pills, we can add attempted murder. No bail this time, Mrs. Harrison. He stays locked up until trial. The preliminary hearing became a full arraignment. The DA added the new charges. Brian's public defender tried to argue that Brian had been worried about his mother and checking on her safety, but the evidence was overwhelming. The broken restraining order, the forced entry, the stolen medication, his recorded threats. The judge denied bail. Brian would await trial in jail. Crystal tried to cut a deal immediately. Her lawyer contacted the DA's office within days. She'd testify against Brian, admit they'd planned to defraud me, admit they'd discussed ways to accelerate the inheritance. In exchange, she wanted reduced charges. Marcus Wells called me to ask my opinion. "What do you think she should get?" he asked. "The truth," I said. "Whatever reflects what she actually did. She was complicit in planning to steal from me and kill me. I don't care if she testifies or not. I want her to face real consequences." No mercy? None. Crystal ended up pleading guilty to conspiracy to commit financial fraud and conspiracy to commit murder. She got 8 years, with possibility of parole after 5. Brian went to trial. His defense was that he was in debt and desperate, but never actually planned to hurt me. His lawyer tried to paint me as paranoid, tried to suggest Donna had misheard the backyard conversation, tried to explain away the search history and the documents as just research. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts: conspiracy to commit financial fraud against an elder, attempted financial exploitation, conspiracy to commit murder, and attempted murder for the break-in. The judge, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair, looked at Brian with cold disgust during sentencing. "Mr. Harrison, you targeted the woman who gave you life, who sacrificed for you, who trusted you. You saw your mother not as a person, but as an obstacle to money you felt entitled to. You researched ways to kill her and make it look natural. You attempted to steal her autonomy, her assets, and ultimately her life. This court finds you to be a danger to society and to your victim specifically. 25 years, no parole eligibility for 15. Brian's face crumpled. He looked at me across the courtroom, and for just a moment, I saw the little boy I'd raised. Then his expression twisted into rage. "This is your fault!" he screamed as they led him away. "You're supposed to love me! You're my mother!" "I do love you," I said quietly, though I wasn't sure he heard. "That's why this breaks my heart, but I love myself more." The courtroom doors closed behind him. It was over. 6 months after the trial, I stood in my newly renovated kitchen. The window Brian had broken had been replaced with impact-resistant glass, the whole frame reinforced. The house felt like mine again. I'd made other changes too. The master bedroom was now a reading room. I'd moved into the smaller bedroom with the better morning light. I'd adopted 2 cats from the Humane Society. Gray tabbies named Luna and Soul. The house felt alive again, full again, but in a better way. The life insurance I'd maintained on myself had been canceled the day after Brian's arrest. No point in providing motive to anyone else. I'd updated my will again with Patricia's help. The Humane Society would get half. The other half would be split between scholarships for first-generation college students and a women's shelter. Brian was explicitly excluded. Not a penny would go to him even after release. Oregon law allowed it, especially given his conviction. My days had settled into a peaceful rhythm. Mornings in the garden, lunch with Eleanor or Donna, book club twice a month, a watercolor class I'd started at the community center. Simple things, good things. I'd finally started seeing a therapist, Dr. Rebecca Morrison, who specialized in family trauma. The grief was real. Mourning not just the son I'd thought I had, but the relationship I'd believed existed. Some days were harder than others. "You're allowed to love him and protect yourself from him," Dr. Morrison had told me. Those aren't contradictory. They're both true. I kept no photos of Brian displayed, but I hadn't destroyed them either. They were boxed in the attic. Maybe someday I'd look at them again. Not yet. Eleanor and I had grown close through all of this. She understood in a way few others could. We took trips together, a weekend to the coast, a week in San Francisco. I was rediscovering independence, joy, possibilities. Donna remained my closest confidant. We had coffee every morning, either at her kitchen table or mine. Luna and Sewell loved her. Sometimes we talked about Brian, sometimes we didn't. She never said, "I told you so," though she would have been entitled to it. The neighborhood had largely moved on from the scandal. At first, there'd been gossip, stares, awkward silences when I walked to the mailbox. But time passed. Other dramas emerged. Most people now just saw me as Margaret, the quiet woman with the cats who grew beautiful roses. Some former friends had sided with Brian, believed his story that I was cruel or confused. I'd lost those relationships. It hurt. But Dr. Morrison helped me see it as natural selection. People who couldn't believe a son would victimize his mother weren't safe people for me anyway. New friends had emerged. Other women from book club who'd had their own family difficulties. A widower from watercolor class who'd been estranged from his children over his decision to remarry. Survivors recognized each other. I heard about Brian and Crystal through Patricia, who kept track of their situations through professional channels. Brian was in Oregon State Penitentiary. He'd been written up twice for fighting in the first 3 months. He'd refused several invitations to family counseling programs. His cellmate had told a guard that Brian spent most of his time raging about the injustice of his situation, blaming me, blaming the system, blaming everyone but himself. He'd written me letters, 3 of them. Patricia had screened them first. They'd been full of justifications, accusations, and demands. "You owe me" appeared in all 3. I'd read them once and filed them away. I never responded. Crystal had ended up at Coffee Creek Correctional Facility. According to her mother, who'd called me once, I'd listened politely but briefly. Crystal had found religion in prison and was attending every Bible study and chapel service available. Her mother seemed to think this should earn her early parole. I'd wished her well and hung up. Crystal's addiction to gambling had apparently been severe. Her mother had discovered that Crystal had stolen jewelry and money from family members before the attempted fraud against me. The family had been in denial. Now they couldn't avoid it. She'd be eligible for parole in less than 4 years. When that hearing came, I would attend and give a statement. I would make sure the parole board understood exactly who she was and what she'd done. Brian's earliest possible parole was 12 years away. I'd be 80 by then. Part of me knew I might not live to see that hearing. Part of me was grateful for that. The money I'd saved my whole life, the money Brian had wanted so desperately, was being put to actual use. I'd started making donations to causes Robert and I had cared about. The Humane Society had named a cat adoption room after us. The college scholarship had already sent 2 students to university. I was spending some on myself, too. The trips with Eleanor, the art classes, small luxuries I'd always denied myself. What good was security if you never enjoyed it? On Luna's recommendation, I'd started volunteering at a senior center, teaching basic computer skills to other elderly folks. One woman, Martha, had started asking me about estate planning after her son had begun pressuring her about money. I'd given her Patricia's card immediately. "Don't wait," I'd told her. "Trust your instincts." She'd updated her will that week. Maybe that was my purpose now, using my nightmare to help others avoid theirs. Some nights, I still woke from dreams where Brian was climbing through my window. But then I'd hear Luna purring beside me, feel the solid reality of my locked doors and security system, remember that I was safe. I'd survived. More than that, I was thriving. And Brian? Brian was exactly where he belonged. So that's my story. My son tried to kill me for money, and I stopped him. I protected myself, prosecuted him, and reclaimed my life. Would you have seen the warning signs? Would you have had the courage to act? Or would you have trusted family over instinct? I hope you never have to make that choice. But if you do, choose yourself. Choose safety. Choose survival. If this story resonated with you, please leave a comment below. Share your thoughts, your experiences. You're not alone in these struggles. And if you want to hear more stories like this, real stories about real people facing impossible choices, subscribe to my channel. I share these truths so others can recognize danger before it's too late. Thank you for listening. Thank you for believing me. And remember, family should be safe. If they're not, you have every right to protect yourself. Stay safe out there.